Okay, I accidentally stopped the previous video. Oops. So I guess this is going to be in two parts. The first part was about the horrific side. And I don't think I even went into that much detail about how horrific it can be. Obviously, if you've been in hospital and have had a tubing and all that, that is even more horrific. And I'm sure people, maybe they do share the horrors, but yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that and move on to things from my past that I think really did not help. And I think they maybe, like, obviously there's a lot of factors. So there was abuse. That I've seen correlation from that and people developing eating disorders. It kind of makes sense because it's like you got treated like shit, so that's learned behaviour. Let's continue to treat yourself like shit until you unlearn it. So yeah, that was one part. Other things. So obviously I've had a lot of therapy, so this is why I'm okay talking about it all. Things that I look back on and like I reflect and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, obviously there was something wrong with the adults in my life when I was growing up. They shouldn't have said the things that they said. There's obviously something wrong there. But it impacted me greatly. And I think did have contribution towards me developing eating disorders. So, I mean, I guess I wasn't that young. I don't remember when I was like super young, other than I really liked being outside. I really liked climbing trees. So when it was dinner time, I just didn't want to come home. I would rather be up a tree. I think that could just be a kid being a kid. I don't know, can't really remember. There's big chunks of my childhood I don't remember. But then I remember things that are problematic. So I have an auntie who is no longer in my life. I decided to cut her out of my life. And when you hear what she did, you probably like, yeah, good. Yeah, that person deserves to be put in the bin. So we went to go stay with her. And it was meant to be a nice holiday. But it wasn't just purely because of her actions. Also, she's an abusive dickhead. So we'd all be having dinner. And she'd always just have to make comments, like negative comments about what was on your plate, how much was on your plate, how you were eating, how much you were eating, the manner in how you were eating. And it's like, why is there so much focus on me and what I am doing with this food? Like, just focus on yourself and don't pass comment or judgment. And that maybe that's transference. Like, obviously they're not okay. But still, like, I was a kid, so piss off. And I was always the one that was like picked on compared to other people in my family. Like, they were picked on too, but maybe about other things. For me, it was always about what I was eating, how I was eating. I still remember her forcing a flipping cherry tomato down my gob and I was sick. Still remember that. Yeah. But yeah, the comments, just not needed, unnecessary. And then the whole like singling me out and picking on me thing was other people could have their dinner without comments. I still remember it'd be like stupid things like, oh, get it down, you lass. Shouldn't sound like that at all. And I'm like, okay. And then afterwards, I wouldn't be allowed dessert. So other people were allowed because they weren't like me. I was told I had to go into another room and do sit-ups after I'd eaten. So imagine having a dinner, so that's like a big meal, like a main meal. It's not just a snack. And then you're being told you have to go do sit-ups. And I was quite a vulnerable, very quiet, shy, sensitive kid who was being picked on at school as well. And then was being picked on by the adults in my life, including her, the poo head. And yeah, so she said I had to go do sit-ups. And there was another adult there who said nothing, would just allow it. So I was like, right, guess I have to go do this then. So I'd be in the other room having my sit-ups, doing my sit-ups. I hate sit-ups, by the way. They are not a good way to build your core. They are a very good way of hurting your lower back, though, especially on wooden floor. And yeah, then I see the pattern between that and then when I was struggling with exercise and just always trying to do things like sit-ups and push-ups and things in my room. It's all linked. But yeah, I could hear them as well in the other room, like making comments about me, like, oh, if she wasn't so, insert negative comment here, then she could have had dessert like the rest of you. It was just, it's bullying. Is it abuse? It probably is abuse. I mean, the amount of therapists that I've seen and I've told them about all the things, they're like, wow, you never went to the police? And I'm like, no, didn't know I could. Oh well, she's out of my life. But it is quite interesting to look back and be like, that is one seriously troubled person, like, to feel the need to treat a kid like that. Like, what's wrong with you? Other things she would say, after I've eaten, like, let a person eat and digest, you div. But yeah, it was like, oh, well, you better get your running shoes on now. And I'm like, what? Why would I put my running shoes on? We've just eaten. And she'd be like, oh, you got to burn that off, get round the block, lass. I'm like, what? And me, like, I usually need to know all the details of something before I do it as well. So for someone to say something like that in that manner, I'm like, I also, are you being serious? Like, what are you saying to me? Can you explain it a bit more? Because I don't really get where you're coming from. You're very strange. But we know now that that was neurodivergence. Yeah, the whole, like, never being allowed dessert, being told to take some food off of my plate, being judged for how much I put on my plate, doesn't matter how much it was just never good enough for this person. And I wasn't the only one being picked on. I was the only kid, but she'd pick on her sisters just as much. Don't know why I was, like, classed as an adult like them, but I think I was like 12, 13. Yeah, I can see how that would form a pretty fucked up relationship with food, wouldn't you? That's just one person, right? I also have a problematic uncle who is unhinged. That's the only way I can describe him. Lots of problematic behaviours, but just personality. An abusive personality, is that a thing? I think he has one. Probably shouldn't have been allowed around kids, to be honest. But yeah, he actually said, the fact that he said this is messed up, he actually said, what you want to aim for is anorexia. What? It's a mental illness. Stupid idiot. You probably haven't seen this side to me before. It's just, people should not say things like that. They just shouldn't. You're glamorizing. So what I just talked about in the other part one, no, glamorizing is not helpful. And also, if your habits become disordered and it goes from disordered eating into, like, full-blown anorexia or bulimia, or eating disorders not otherwise stated, is that what EGNOS stands for? Like, you know, the one that has a weird label but doesn't really have a name. I had that for a bit. I don't even really understand what it means. But yeah, when you're in it, it's horrific. It's all-consuming. It's horrific. You can't get stuff done. You can't do your work. You can't be productive. You can't be happy. You cannot be happy because it takes over your life and it makes you miserable. Why would you wish that on anyone? Like, that's real messed up, man. No. Then there's other things. Maybe not so much related to eating, but a massive part of, I think, why I wanted to control my intake and my body so much was because I had such a big fear of failure. I just always thought, like, I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to fail at this. I can't control this. At least I can control what goes into me. And, like, to an extent, I mean, I guess when I got into fitness, it was what I looked like. And I think it stems from being called a failure so many times by, you know, like, that auntie and that uncle. I still remember when he rang me and just was like, you're a bitch, for like half an hour, until I put the phone down and was like, why do I have to listen to you? Whoa, weird person. Yeah, my dad is obviously the sibling of these other weirdos and is just as bad, because he does not stop them. He allowed all of this behaviour. He allowed the nipping and the hitting as well. You know, when I was covered in bruises, that was allowed. Shouldn't have been allowed. Yeah, obviously he's had issues too, in, like, controlling his temper, but he's better now. But one thing he needs to work on is how you talk to your kids. So I recall things like him going, oh, you're a failure, once a failure, always a failure, and that really stuck. That stuck for years. That took ages to unlearn, because, like, when you're running your own business, you have to take risks. And if you don't, you're not going to be as successful. And at the back of my mind, oh God, not in my hair, was, I'm going to fail at this. Like, I've been told, I literally have evidence. I have evidence in the back of my mind that this isn't going to work and I'm going to be a huge failure. Well, I've proved him wrong now, anyway. And whatever was going on in my head. So yeah, it's possible to unlearn, but never should have been said. Other things, like when I decided I'd had enough of everyone and wanted to move out and move in with my, at the time, boyfriend, that's a big no-no in my culture. But I was like, I'm doing it because I cannot flipping stand living with all you weirdos telling me really messed up things. Like, I think I was getting to the point I could tell it was all affecting my confidence, and I could tell it was messing with my head, and like the mind games that Auntie was playing. I was like, no, I've had enough. I need to get out of here. And in response to that, my dad was like, well, what are you? Like, you're nothing? And I look back on that and I'm like, you told your daughter she was nothing. That's not very nice. It was like, you're nothing. You're like, what is your value? You know, like, you've not made any money. And I'm like, well, I'm like a barista. Of course I'm not making that much money. But I was starting an apprenticeship and I was going to go in the direction I wanted to go. So who was he to say that I'm nothing? I'll become something, maybe, if you want to be part of my life. That's up to you. But yeah, he was like, you don't have a penny to your name. Yeah, you're a nobody. Who are you going to be if you move out? Nothing. And I'm like, no, this is how I become something. Anyway, I decided to reject everything that he said. Obviously, some of it stays and had to have more therapy. But yeah, what a messed up thing to say to your kid. You're nothing, you're not worth anything just because you don't have a penny to your name. Like, yeah, I had nothing and I worked my flipping arse off. I worked 3 jobs at one point, so I could be self-employed and live how I live now. And I'm pretty proud of myself, and I don't really, now I'm like, I don't care that all these weird people said all their weird things, like, because that's a them problem. They're never going to be happy. Like, I actually feel sorry for them. Like, you felt like it was okay to say that to a little kid. Like, you really do need to look inward and assess why you did that and why you thought that was okay. Why are you how you are? Like, you really need to, yeah, look inward and figure that out. But maybe it's too late for them. I don't know. I've also just sort of let go, and it's like, if they really wanted to work on themselves, they would, and they don't want to. So bye. But yeah, that probably all did contribute towards having like such low self-esteem, like being so insecure and feeling the need to do something to feel better, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably why I was seeking these like destructive behaviours, because even though they were destructive, they in a really messed up way made me feel better. But we don't do that anymore. We just lift weights now and live a life that we've always wanted to, which is like this, with freedom, just being unapologetically me, and have a really cute dog, and the dog brings me lots of joy, and I'm in a loving relationship, which feels lovely. So it all works out, even if people are horrible to you and they're dicks, and yeah, everything's messed up. You can come out of it, you can overcome, and you're stronger because of it. It sucks, you know, when people are like, oh, you're so strong, you're so brave. I'm like, well, it wasn't fun, Sheila. But we did it. Thank you. Gonna leave it at that, because I thought that was quite funny. Until next time.